on that. On the nominations, excuse me, let me just say that we've got hundreds of people that are here in Jefferson County tonight, and they all deserve to be heard. And we have a way that we're going to do that tonight. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to stay here and do it. But we're going to have a conversation. And I'm glad you asked, where did you go, sir? Where did you go? I'm glad you can sit. I'm glad you asked the question. I mean, there are people that I have voted for that were nominees of this president. That's true. Marco Rubio was one, who's the Secretary of State. Okay, well, he got 100 votes. Chris Wright, whom you mentioned, who's from Colorado and is the Energy Secretary. The Secretary of Agriculture, whom you mentioned, we have farmers and ranchers all over Colorado who are suffering because of in part, the tariffs that this president is putting on, but also because of the difficulties that are happening in our rural economy. I voted for the Veterans Secretary because we have hundreds of thousands of veterans. In fact, we have a higher percentage of veterans in Colorado than in any other state in the country. So I hear you. I hear that if you were in the job, you would have done something differently. But those are the reasons why I voted for on the transportation money. We have together fought for $12 billion of transportation money that's come to Colorado, including $100 million for Floyd Hill just by itself, which we were able to get done with Brittany's help. $400 million coming to Jefferson County, not just in infrastructure, but in the total dollars, including what's coming to NREL. I thought it was useful to be able to have a relationship with the people that are going to be making a decision about whether Colorado is going to have that money or not. So that is the answer to your question, and I appreciate you raising it. Yes, sir. Sir? Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for thank you for being here. Hey, we're not going to do it this way. We're not going to do it this way. You're not going to just. We're just not. Okay, great. Okay. I think. What is? Sir. Hey, Max.
We want to hear from everybody. We want to hear from everybody. All right, friends, we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to speak. So let's be respectful.
Okay.
Let's listen to the next question.
Sir, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Listen. Thank you, sir. Please. I'm
Senator
sorry.
Bennet and
Please go ahead.
Representative Peterson. I served in silence for this country for 14 years
I'm sorry,
for a
sir.
defense contractor.
Could you start again? I couldn't hear you, but now I can, so thank you.
I'm now retired, but I've served our country in silence for 14 years for a defense contractor. I'm very concerned about the security of our country. And I'm especially, I guess, wondering how I did software engineering, and I'm wondering how, typically when I was in my job, I locked my computer. I never left my desk with my computer unlocked. Most of these servers are behind cipher-locked rooms, so I'm kind of wondering what's going on with all these government agencies and how they're gaining access to these computers when those computers should be locked. And they need to be, to me, it would take a court order or something similar in order for those people, these Doge people, to get into these computers. I don't understand it, so I was wondering if you could shed some light on that.
Well, thank you, sir, for your service. We appreciate you. And you directed the question to me first. I know Senator Bennet, because of the committee that he sits on, will have a lot more to say about this as well. But I'm deeply concerned about the security of our country. We know that Donald Trump gave a directive to stop all of our intelligence around what Russia is doing to infiltrate our infrastructure, get our data. I don't know about you, but I've started to get a lot of Russian spam lately. Not a coincidence. But more importantly, we are also on the offense there. And we have Doge who's taking our data, our private information, breaking the law. And so what we have right now to do is to fight back in the judicial system and to show up at these town halls and to be a voice right now. You all being here is a really important piece of us showing the momentum that we have. The concerned citizens, like I said, this is from all party lines. This is not just about Democrats. This is about people that thought, you know, I was willing to put my feelings about Donald Trump and knowing that he is a very bad person, except for his radical base. Nobody thinks that this is a good human being. But they were willing to put it aside if they thought that their lives were going to be better. And all they have seen since is chaos and dysfunction. And he promised on day one he was going to lower costs, and he hasn't focused on anything that would do that. And in fact, it is the opposite. We're about to see tariffs go into effect in just a couple of weeks with skyrocketing costs that are going to come down on all of us. And we've seen complete instability in the marketplace. And so this is the beginning of a very long 4 years, and it is going to be us showing up here, showing up in the streets, and fighting back. And I just want to say thank you all for being respectful. I know that these are in tense times and we can have disagreements, but I don't think that engaging in that way is helpful. So can we all make sure that we're going to have a good discussion tonight and respect one another? And I can tell you that nobody has fought harder than Senator Bennet. Nobody has fought harder than Senator Bennet for the future of our kids, for our planet, for investing in the infrastructure that we need to address climate change. I also, Senator Bennet is a fighter. When the Senate disappointed all of us, Senator Bennet voted no. He stood with us. He fought back.
Don't. Let me answer. Excuse me. What you're saying is totally false. It's not true. And there are a lot of people here that want to have there are a lot of people. Stop it. stop. 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 You know, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Let me say this. Some of you may know, hey, Max, we can't do, it's not, you just.
Don't manhandle him. Don't manhandle him. Don't manhandle him. Don't manhandle him. Don't touch him.
You have no right to touch me. I will press charges.
Don't touch him. Don't touch him.
I will leave when the senator ends.
It's really hard for me to see how this is going to help us stop Donald Trump. It's really, really hard for me to understand that. Sir, I'm going to, because we've lost so much, where did you go? Thank you for your question. Let me just mention, you know, President Trump ran on the idea of putting America first. And I've completely been unable to see how he's put us first when it comes to our national security. It seems to me like he's doing exactly the opposite of that. I'm on the Intelligence Committee in the Senate. And the idea that we are undermining Ukraine, undoing their negotiating position, that President Trump, while the American people have certainly been generous in terms of the weapons we have supplied to Ukraine, Trump's inability to understand that it's Ukraine that has done everybody a favor by standing up to Putin. That it's Ukraine who has suffered 400,000 casualties on the front lines. They've lost 40,000 soldiers. And their fight is not a fight for Ukraine. It's a fight for democracy. It's a fight for the West. It's a fight for the United States of America. And when you see the Donald Trump standing with Putin, it really raises serious questions about our national security. That's a reason, if there's no other reason, that we have to all push back. And you're right to worry about the data. There are a lot of federal employees that are very worried that every single thing they write in an email and a text is now being monitored. By so much worse than that. So much worse than that. So these are things that we now have to be really vigilant about because of the world that we're living in. So thanks for raising it. We need the next two people.
Can I, while we're getting the next two people, just for the federal employees here, if you go straight to press, there can be issues that you'll face, legal challenges. If you come to our office, we can help support you with whistleblower protection and making sure that you have the resources that you need. But I just want to address, we want to hear from you, from our federal workers, so please reach out to our office. All right, let's see who's next.
Yes, I'm going to read the next two questions. The first question is going to be 616-2106. That is 616-2106. The second question is going to be 616-2136. That is 616-2136.
Thank you. Where's the other one? The other? Got kicked out. See, that means we're not screening the questions. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Colin. I live in Denver. First off, thank you so much for taking the time today to speak with your constituents. It really means a lot, especially when Republican lawmakers are refusing to hold town halls. So this really means a lot. Thank you. My question today is for Senator Bennet. Last week during the fight on the continuing resolution to keep the government open, there were reports that you could be heard shouting at Senator Minority Leader Schumer for not having a plan on how to handle the issue. Considering the dire times we are in and the fact that you yourself admitted and we're angry that Schumer had no plan in the Democrats' only moment of leverage against Trump. When will you be calling for him to be replaced as minority leader? Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. I would say maybe not yelling at him so much as, but I do think that it is, it is really important that that we are able to lift up the stakes that we're fighting, and for the American people to know what we're fighting for on their behalf. And I don't think it was clear in this debate that we were. I think we're going to have another opportunity very soon to make it very clear. This fight around Medicaid, this fight that Elon Musk and the rest of these social media knuckleheads are having to make sure that they can give their stocks for free to their Nepo children, and to preserve their tax benefits. That's going to be a really good fight and a clear fight that we're going to have with the American people. I do think on the leadership question, it's always better to examine whether folks are in the right place, and we're certainly going to have that conversation. You may remember that I was actually the first member of the Democratic caucus to say, after Joe Biden's terrible debate with Donald Trump, that we were going to lose in a landslide if we didn't do something different. And I went on CNN that night and said that. And I think that we had a tough election as we had it. I don't blame Kamala Harris for that. I think she was put in a very tough position. And I think Joe Biden deserves huge credit for beating Donald Trump to begin with, which was incredibly important, and for delivering the infrastructure bill and the other legislation that was so vital. And in dodging your question, let me just say, it's important for people to know, when it's time to go. And I think in the case of Joe Biden, and we're going to have conversations, I'm sure, in the foreseeable future about all the Democratic leadership. And I'm waving it not at the Congresswoman. But thank you for your question. Thank you for asking it. What's the next one? Is there a next one?
We're going to go.
I just tried to explain it. I appreciate it.
We're going to go to the next two questions. It's going to be 616-2129. That is 616-2129 and 609-7517. 609-7517.
It's hard when there are this many people. Like 1, 2, 3 is not going to work.
Exactly.
Well,
Go ahead, please.
Okay. Oh, I'm over here. I'm a little bit confused why Mike Johnson has so much power and doesn't. Okay, Mike Johnson is second in line to the presidency. He doesn't take emails, phone calls, except from his one little pocket that voted him into office. And he should be held to a higher thing. I can't talk to him. When he was 2 years ago, before the election, I was trying to write letters to him. And my friends in New Orleans were trying to write to him. But he doesn't answer to anyone but Donald Trump. How can we change that?
Well, that's my chamber. This is what's really concerning is when we've seen a complete takeover of the Republican Party from Donald Trump. We all have people in our family who grew up being Republicans. We have our neighbors, people that don't align with the party that he's created, right? And the most terrifying thing is to watch, thank you for the shout out to the commissioner for when I showed up to vote no with my 4-week-old son to stand up against their budget directives, their budget cuts. But there was a moment where we thought we were going to kill that bill because they spotted, it was actually on X, a reporter saw me walking in. They didn't know I was there alongside one of my colleagues who they weren't expecting. And they actually called the vote off and told everybody to go home. And we thought that there was a chance we might have killed it, or at least, lived to see another day. And all it took was Donald Trump calling, screaming at people, threatening them that if they didn't fall in line, if they didn't vote yes, they were done. And unfortunately, those people flipped and voted, even though they knew that that was absolutely devastating. It would bring devastating consequences for their district. And so what we're seeing is, Donald Trump threatens people. He threatens Mike Johnson. Everybody falls in line. So this is what we're up against. But the greatest opportunity that we have is the slim majority that they do have in the U.S. House. And all we need to kill these terrible bills that are going through that are going to gut healthcare for kids, for our seniors, for people like my mom who are working low-wage jobs who can't afford healthcare, and stripping away their healthcare, hitting us with the costs, our skyrocketing insurance costs because of uncompensated care showing up at the ERs, dismantling our education system, everything that is happening right now. We only need 3 Republican votes in the U.S. House. And so it's going to take all of us calling. And to your point, a lot of it is filtered because we only have so much staff. So if you're not in the right area, it doesn't go through when you're sending an email. But we need you to call, we need you to show up, and not just in this district, but we have Republican colleagues that also need to hear from you here in Colorado. In fact, the 8th Congressional District has the highest Medicaid recipients in Colorado. I think that we have someone that needs to hear from you. So thank you for the question. I wish I had an answer, but right now, it really is everybody is falling in line with Donald Trump, and it is the frustration that all of us have witnessed. And we need courage right now. We need people that care more about the future of this country than the jobs that they have.
I hesitate to say anything because I'm not in the House, but I would also say one other thing we could do for Speaker Johnson is to make sure in the next midterm election he is no longer the Speaker of the House.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm from Lakewood, Colorado. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for making the big trip over here.
Every single person here makes me feel a little more hopeful. My question is, given that the government structure and specifically the funding itself are constitutionally mandated, can you illuminate on what legal framework is being followed to justify the actions of DOGE in reducing government offices and workers? Does this initiative comply with constitutional limits? That feels like a no.
Go ahead. Please finish your question. Or is that it?
Mike's dead. Oh, he's back. Sorry. Does this initiative comply with constitutional limits on executive power? That feels like a no. And Congress's control over federal spending specifically.
Shall I take it? I think you're absolutely right, which is why we've seen courts already begin to enjoin or stop Trump's administration and DOGE in particular from doing what they're doing. Obviously, we have a long way to go before those cases are resolved, but I have been very encouraged to see the courts do what they're doing. I have to say, I may get booed for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I was very encouraged to see the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court step up yesterday and say what he said. So, and I totally agree. I mean, I'm a lawyer and actually have studied constitutional law, but I bet you your average 7th grader in Colorado would be able to agree that the Constitution has Congress deciding how the money should be spent, not the President of the United States. And that, in the end, I think we are going to be successful. But we have to keep making noise. We have to keep raising our voices so people hear it, that this is not okay. And I'll tell you, let me just give you an example that's very, very close to home. You know, we saw them laying off Forest Service employees just at the moment when we're about to go into fire season again in Colorado. There's not a place in our state, not one town or a community or a farm and ranch that does not depend on the water that comes from those national forests. And we are in a fight, a war over that right now, and I believe we will win that war with the federal government and with Donald Trump, because in the end, they're not going to be able to withstand the public approbation for what they did or dismay about what they're doing. And it's a good example of, I think, what we're going to be able to push back on. And that's why we can't give up. We got to keep pushing. We have to keep pushing. And when they say, we didn't lay off any firefighters, which is what they said, and we can say, well, by the way, 60% of the employees you did lay off all have red cards that allow them to fight fires in Colorado and throughout the Rocky Mountain West. You don't know what you're talking about. All right, who's next?
I have two more tickets over here.
Okay.
We're going to have 616-2130. That is 616-2130. And 616-2156. 616-2156.
Here, gentleman here, and yep.
My name is Sandy.
Yes, I'll mention that afterwards. Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
My name is Sandy, and I'm from Parker, Colorado. And I would like to ask you both, what are you going to do if Donald Trump declares martial law?
I mean, I'm terrified with the overreach and the complete disregard for the law. We saw that they continued to deport 200 people that they claimed were part of a gang from Venezuela, and completely dismissed a federal judge's ruling. So it is a very scary time, and I worry about things like that that can be utilized in the future. I don't think that any of us know exactly what that looks like right now, and I don't know, Senator, if you want to add on to this, but you know, these are scary times, but how we overcome the overreach is actually showing up. And in the history of the world, how we've overcome fascists trying to take over are people in the streets and people like you showing up and not backing down.
I think what Brittany just said is probably the most important answer we're going to hear all night long when we're up here. We are living in this country in a profoundly reactionary period, and we have had that in American history before. Hopefully, there'll be an America that in the future, and if we have one, we're going to experience it again in the future. Every single time there has been a reactionary period in our history before this, it has always been followed by a profound period of progressive change in this country, always. And that's what's going to happen again. But we have to get from here to the other side of this to be able to do that. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is to show up the way Brittany said and the way all of you are doing it tonight. So thank you for being here tonight.
Lakewood. This might be a similar question, but the question is short, but I don't think it's an easy answer. What did we do as citizens, and what are you going to do if the current administration disregards the judicial orders that come out against them?
Look, where did you go? Sorry, sit down. I will spare you this, but I wrote a book that almost nobody has read. I was glad to write it. It's called The Land of Flickering Lights, and I know my daughters someday will read it, or maybe I'll be dead and I won't really know whether they read it or not, but they'll know what I believed. And one thing I believed, and I wrote this in my book years ago, is that I think that we have much too narrow a definition of the word founder in this country. You know, we talk about the people that wrote the Constitution, wrote the Declaration of Independence, but for example, I write in this book that I think of Frederick Douglass as a founder. How could he not be in this country? Or the women who fought for 100 years for the self-evident right to vote and died during that fight, never recognized. To me, they're founders every bit as much as Thomas Jefferson was. The bad news for all of you is my conclusion in the book is that's what all of you are too. This was before Trump, which is, you know, when you think about what the role of a citizen in a democracy is, it is that elevated. And really, it's not a stretch when you think about it, because in the end, it really is going to depend on what we do, more than what Donald Trump does. You know, Donald Trump would not be surprising at all to the people that wrote our Constitution and wrote our Declaration of Independence. They knew the history of the Roman Republic better than anybody. They knew it better than we know it. It's part of our history. And what they knew is every now and then there was somebody who would show up who cared about nobody except themselves, who was just trying to get rich, who was willing to turn his army on Rome for his own benefit, for the benefit of the people that might have supported him or that he was paying. And they put these checks and balances in place with the idea that such a person could arise. They had a fairly dim view of human character, actually. They really did. And they would be shocked to know we made it 230 years. They'd be shocked to know that we eradicated slavery, which is something that they didn't have the guts to do when they founded this country. But Frederick Douglass had the guts to lead that fight with Abraham Lincoln. And I think that we are going to have to make sure that the courts feel the support of the American people. And it's important for us to say, even if, you know, we don't like to talk about the Chief Justice on a public stage somewhere, thank you, Chief Justice, for saying what you said about the courts. Thank you, Republicans somewhere, if there is one, who's willing to stand up for the independence of the judiciary. And that's what we've got to find a way to fight for. Because I have no doubt he'll disregard what the courts say. I think he'll push and push and push and try to get away with it. We're seeing it with the case that Judge Boasberg had in D.C. and with the case that was asked about up there. But so far, that bulwark is holding, and that's right. And we have to continue to push and push and push to make sure it stays strong and the other checks and balances stay strong. There is nothing, we're learning this the hard way, but it's something that people have learned throughout human history, and that is there's nothing self-executing about a democracy, it turns out. And it's a lot harder to save than we ever thought it would be. Think about all the time we've spent tonight on this stuff, when what we also need to be talking about is what's the opportunity in this country for the kids I used to work for as their superintendent in the Denver public schools? You know, and what are we doing to create a better education system for them and a better economy for them?
My kid has no future. Keep taking money from oil and gas.
All right.
Step up or step aside. Step up or step aside.
Who's next? Who's the next?
I have 2 more tickets. This is going to be 609-7391. That's 609-7391. and 616-2153. 616-2153.
Did you guys hear that? I meant the numbers, not the.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate you both doing this.
Thank you for doing this.
What's that? Oh, I really appreciate you being here in person to do this with us despite all the disruptions. My question
I was
is...
blaming it on the Congresswoman, but she said it wasn't her fault. I was kidding.
My question is sort of related to the one that was just asked before. And we're talking about sort of the threat to the foundations of the government and the person in charge seizing it. And the Democratic Party being what everyone here is sort of hoping and looking for to have a organized response to it. But there often doesn't seem to be, you know, a singular voice from the party. Can you give us any impression of how you obviously both have much more knowledge behind the scenes what's happening, but how hopeful are you that the party can organize us to do the things you were just talking about?
Go ahead.
Well, I know that everybody here, this is why we're here, right? You want to know that we're fighting back, and you want to know what the plan is and what role you can all play. And so this is part of what we're doing. I know Senator Bennet has numerous town halls throughout Colorado. As you know, we have Republicans who are hiding, who are unwilling to show their face in their communities because they're about to strip away critical services and care that people rely on. And so I think when people say, we don't have a voice, you know, who's going to be our leader in the future? We have a lot of amazing and talented people, inspiring people, but there's a lot of voices. The presidential isn't for another couple of years. But you're going to start to see, I would say, within my caucus, we've had to quickly try to respond to how fast-moving this is. I mean, they came in, we all warned about their plan on what they were going to do with Project 2025, right? Unfortunately, voters didn't listen to us, but they have a blueprint of what they're going to do to dismantle all the things that we care about and the institutions that protect us. So we are, so even though I said this at my other town hall too, I don't know if anyone joined us there, but I said just because we're not in power does not mean we're powerless. And I think that is the frustration that people feel right now, is that even though we are not in the majorities, I think we need to level set on what is possible, but also, even more importantly, how important all of you are in showing up and fighting back. And so while that, as Senator Bennet talked about, is challenging when we talk about what we need to do to preserve our democracy, to fight back, it really is on all of us, and it's not going to be one leader that is going to come out of this to address all of this. And so it's going to be our campaigns, not that this is not a campaign event, but it is going to be fighting back in the midterms. It's going to be showing up in the districts of the folks who don't want to show their faces. It's going to be speaking out, telling your stories. When I ask the federal workers to reach out, we win hearts and minds, and we pull the voters along who have been disillusioned and voted for Trump because they thought he was going to make their lives better, to make sure that they're hearing from the people who are going to be impacted. So we have to change heart and minds, and we have to show up, and that's really going to be on all of us. It's not going to be one leader, but it's going to be all of us together. You have leaders here who are fighting for you, and that's why we're here. We're here to tell you.
Let me where did you go? So, I mean, I think, I'm not going to repeat what I said earlier, but I think it's all of us. I think it's the two of us. I think it's all of you. We have different roles and responsibilities here. There are lots of ways we can show up. Listen, there is an attempt right now all over America to whitewash the history of the United States of America. That is happening all over. They are, you no longer apparently can look at the guys raising the flag at Iwo Jima because one of those guys is Native American. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time trying to preserve with our friend Joe Neguse, Camp Amachi on the eastern plains of Colorado, and now apparently the people that actually fought for this country, even while their relatives were locked up behind barbed wire on the plains, can no longer be celebrated in the United States of America. This is critically important for us to respond to. That is critically important for us to respond. This is critically important for us to respond to, and it's really important for young people in this country to understand what others have done over the course of our nation's history to make progress. And it's true that, you know, it's been helpful from time to time to have useful presence in the United States, but that is nowhere near the power that the American people have had throughout this time. And nobody is asking, you know, I think all the time about John Lewis on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, subjecting his skull to the billy clubs there, not for himself, but as a sacrifice on behalf of our democracy. And that is what we're called upon to do today, some version of that. And that's what we're going to have to do if we're going to save it. And I want to also say something about the Democratic Party, since you mentioned it.